recording here. All right. Now, interview with Dr. L.
Love it. That sounds so official.
So official, right?
Okay, so let me see. So the first one is, how long have I been involved in the environmental science program here at App? What made me become interested? So I have been the director of the environmental science program for a little bit over a year.
Nice.
It feels like a lot longer than that, but it's been a little over a year, which was great. So the former director actually got a job offer overseas in China, and so it was one of those things where it was like too good for him to pass up. So he had to leave us, and the position opened up, and I kind of do like paleo environmental science, like I kind of bridge geology and environmental science, and so I kind of thought, this might be kind of a cool way now that environmental science is merged with the geology department. It kind of would be a nice pairing. So plus, I kind of was thinking like, well, maybe I'll try my hand at administration, see how I like it, and so far I've been loving it. So
nice.
The opportunity was unexpected, but so far it's been great.
Right, that's awesome.
Yeah. Staying on track.
Okay.
Absolutely. All right, good. Is environmental science a relatively new program? Well, in terms of the history of the university, it is relatively new. Even environmental science as a field, I would say, is kind of relatively new in the past, maybe 2 decades or so. But at App, it has been a program for, a couple of years. I should say more like several years. But it has now, within the last 2 years, become a part of this department. It used to be a standalone program. But programs don't necessarily have a department chair, a departmental office, a dedicated faculty, things like that. So it was kind of a little bit difficult at first. See, the environmental science students kind of felt adrift, like they didn't have where do I go if I have a problem? Like there's no main office, and I don't, So now that we've merged and we have a kind of a blended department with geology and environmental science, it's great. The students are seeing each other in the same classes. They've got the same office now they can come to, and it's definitely got more of a sense of like home here in the department. Plus, it just seems natural to me too how the two kind of work together. So while it's not a new program necessarily, the blended merged program now under the rubric of the department is so far going smoothly.
Right.
We have like 150 majors, I think, or something like that. So it's growing.
Yeah.
And there's all the growing pains associated with that, but it's good for that.
New thing,
for that reason.
Get all the kinks out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But hey, look, that's a great problem to have.
Yeah, right.
I'd rather have more majors than not enough.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely. Okay. What types of jobs do you imagine environmental science? Oh my gosh.
I know it's probably pretty broad question.
Well, we can kind of group them. It is a broad question, but I can group them for you. So several different sectors of types of jobs. Lots of students will go into environmental consulting. So the idea is if a company wants to come in and build, heck, even if you want to just go build a house or whatever else, right? You have to have a site assessment, make sure that the land isn't in a flood zone or in a riparian buffer or near a wetland. Right? So usually they bring in either a geologist or an environmental scientist to do that kind of stuff. If you want to do road expansions like what they're doing out on 221 right now, you have to do an environmental site assessment first, and so you need to bring in somebody who's
that makes a lot of sense.
Trained in all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to, put a 4-lane highway right through a endangered habitat or something.
Right? So, absolutely.
So that's one thing. A lot of our students kind of get in on the ground floor of environmental consulting. Lots of students also will go into, say, like environmental health. So literally working for a company where they actually deal with things like waste treatment or, waste management, water treatment, water quality. I have a lot of students now who work at municipal water treatment plants. So that's certainly something that's important as well. A little different than the environmental consulting. You're not working for a private company. You might be working for a state or local government. So, but definitely lots of job openings for that. Every town, every city needs an environmental kind of planner like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I have a lot of students who, because of their environmental science degree, they do a lot of GIS work. And so lots of also town planning, city planning, whatever else, they're often looking for people who have not only the science background, but also the GIS experience. So city planners and whatever else, they're always looking for people to help with that as well. Of course, there's also the larger organizations that probably come to mind, the EPA, Department of Natural and Energy Resources, DENR, and Department of Environmental Quality, all that sort of stuff. So you can be at the state level or at the national level. Lots of opportunities there as well. And believe it or not, I actually have a lot of students going into things like the National Park Service.
Oh, nice.
Or they'll look for things like, oh my gosh, why is my brain not functioning right now? A lot of like nonprofit organizations like New River Conservancy or, oh my gosh, my brain. When it works, it's awesome. When it doesn't, it doesn't.
Oh, you're railing out all the acronyms.
But yeah, but that's, stuff like that. So like, nonprofits or things like that. And then there are also some very large geological and environmental science firms that are international. Golder and Associates is a big one. And they do like corporate scale environmental stuff. So, and Golder, like I said, is international. They've got offices essentially all over the world. So if you're looking to travel, looking to kind of get into that sort of stuff, there's a whole bunch of different types.
Yeah, that's a huge range.
Definitely. And, from the local level all the way up to the, state or national level, depends on what you want to do. But there's a bunch of different choices.
Nice. Oh, awesome.
Wetland specialists, all that sort of good stuff too. Working with biologists, you name it. Biofuels. I have a lot of people looking at going into master's programs, grad schools for biofuels and whatever.
That's probably not going away anytime soon.
No, and what's cool about that is that then you kind of link up with like the folks over in SD and then the Sustainable Tech Department. So that's a big, lots of push right now. Air quality. Lots of students looking into air quality and atmospheric studies. So lots of things are now coming to mind that the brain is actually waking up. But so lots of stuff like that. Yeah.
Pardon me.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Okay. In your opinion, what makes environmental science majors different than any other science-based majors? That's a great question, actually. They're awesome. No. Not that the other science majors are not. However, here's the thing. A lot of students that look at the environmental science curriculum are like, oh my gosh, this looks overwhelming. Because to be, if you think about what's the definition of the environment, Albert Einstein said it's everything that's not me.
That's a great one.
That's a great thing. So you now, as an environmental scientist, have to know about everything. You don't have to just know about, biology or chemistry or physics. You have to know it all. Because essentially all of those systems, right, are around you. And so what makes an environmental scientist different is that they do have to have a firm basis in just science, not just biology, not just chemistry, but they also have to see how all that stuff works together. So without sounding a little too cliche, right, the synergistic, relationship between how if you understand the rocks but you don't understand the water chemistry, it's not going to help you understand the biology.
Yeah, it's not going to help you understand how they interact and stuff.
Right.
You really got to have the whole picture.
Yeah, having those disparate concepts is one thing. Anybody can kind of gain that knowledge, but kind of seeing how that all integrates. So rather than just being a specialist in one area, environmental scientists really need to have a broad base of knowledge and see those connections. So that's kind of what we've designed in the new curriculum. We've tried to get a couple where you guys go out and take your courses, but then you come back every year or every other semester or so, and you kind of see how all that stuff works together. Little bit challenging, but of course then it makes you, highly desirable when you got into the job field.
Yeah, having that whole just broad range is way better than just like specific. Like it might having the specifics might help you get a certain job, but it seems like the broad range.
I'm not saying that it won't, but and it actually feeds into your next question perfectly. Do you imagine that there will be a need for environmental science graduates in the near or distant future? Yes, absolutely. In fact, as everybody keeps talking about, the IPCC reports and climate change, and I don't know if you saw the recent summary report that came out about the 1.5 degrees, but I forget how many there were, 7 or 8 main take-home points were essentially the challenges that we're going to face in the next couple of years with, resource shortages, food shortages, increasing temperature, rising sea level, all that sort of stuff. And so, is there going to be a need for environmental science? Absolutely. And more importantly, not just the people that know how to explain it, but the people who have the solutions.
Yeah.
It's not just, it's one thing to be able to understand it, but it's another thing to be able to say, here's what we ought to do. And I think the super important part, and this is not part of your question, but being able to translate science to the public is going to be critical for any sort of environmental scientist. Really not spewing out all the scientific jargon, but just saying it in a plain way so that people understand where you're coming from and understand the severity of some of it.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. 'Cause, yeah, like you even just talking to my friends and stuff about like kind of like climate change stuff. Like you start throwing all the and they kind of lose interest because you just start using big words and like. But it's still an important message you got to get across.
Exactly right. And so many people I think get into the mindset of, well, it's not going to affect me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they say, okay, well, it's going to affect your kids and your grandkids. Well, but that's not me. Yeah. So how do you kind of make it important to everybody? And I think that's a critical skill for any scientist, period. But it's certainly going to be important for environmental science going forward.
Oh yeah, especially how I feel about the current. I don't like talk politics. Yeah. We're actually moving in the opposite direction.
Yes.
We came in like,
yes, we are.
It blows the mind.
Yes, we are. You're not allowed to quote this, but I agree with you 100%. Yes, that was off the record, by the way.
Off the record,
absolutely. Yeah, all right, cool. Because I'm not allowed to have a political opinion.
Really? Oh. Well, I guess, once you're at this level.
Because I am a spokesperson of this university.
Oh, yeah, that makes... Yeah, gotta leave everything behind.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So moving on. What styles of writing are most common in the environmental science field? Oh, scientific writing. Scientific writing is very different. So I was an undergraduate philosophy major, right? When I started this whole college thing, and I was a humanities major. So you know how humanities majors write. You know, it's very Hemingway-esque. Like you have the topic sentence, and then you have your supporting sentences, and then you have your concluding sentence, and that makes your paragraph. That is not scientific writing. So the first paper I wrote in graduate school, my advisor like bled all over it. It was just nothing but red. It was very patriotic. It was white paper, blue ink, and red all over it. But so scientific writing is definitely very different than humanities writing. And so I see you have here like MLA and APA. So yeah, APA for sure, you know, we how do you say what you need to say in a clear and concise manner? The other thing that's different about it is that you keep your observations and your interpretations separate so that you show, here's my data, here's what is observable and repeatable, right? This is science.
The scientific method.
And then, yeah, exactly right. And then you then go into the whole thing about, okay, using that data, here's how I interpret it. And so it's super important. And we teach that to all of our students. It's like, okay, literally, I want you to write me 2 separate paragraphs. Describe only, then interpret, so that they kind of get into the pattern of doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a bit different. I mean, it took me a while. There's some people in this department who are amazing at it. Sarah Carmichael is fantastic at it. For me, it takes work because I want to fall back into that. Let me just tell you everything. And it's just not appropriate for science.
Like growing up, you're taught like the basic, writing styles like that. And then science, I guess a lot more like, just concise to the point, like not worried about all that fluff. Like,
well, also and no passive voice and like all that. So there's a lot of stuff that you would use in more kind of literary writing. It has no place here in science. So yeah, it was a bit challenging.
Right.
What types of writing are prominent? Ooh, that's a good question.
Kind of
research.
Similar,
no, well, it's a little different. So research reports, presentations, essays, journals. My answer is yes, all of the above.
Ah, nice.
So you may. I daily do research notes, or if I'm looking at data or whatever, I'll take research notes. That's just kind of stuff for me, informal analysis, whatever else. We are often writing journal articles. I just got one published today
nice.
with 3 student authors, which is pretty cool. Yep, air high five, that's cool. And so that was great. And the students are super excited that they got their name on a paper, and it was really cool to work with them. Presentations, absolutely. We do poster presentations, oral presentations at conferences, regionally and nationally, sometimes internationally. I did one in East Africa at one point. So sometimes, they range from just kind of informal little things, but then up to, full page manuscripts, research, citations, all that sort of stuff. So a broad range of types of writing, but all of it's got to conform to that,
kind of sciencey based.
Totally. And supported by literature and references and all that sort of stuff. Whatever's not yours, you make sure you cite.
Yeah, building off of other people's stuff.
Congrats. Thanks, you too. He's one of the authors on the paper.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
Let's see. Why is environmental science important to you? Well, because if the environment is everything that's not me, it's pretty much relevant to everybody.
Oh, that is a great answer.
Yeah. I've been practicing that one. Thank you. No, I never would have said that as a kid. I would have never said that like, oh, I want to be an environmental scientist, but I was thinking that way, that my whole life. I just didn't know what to call it. Like I wanted to be an oceanographer at one point, and I wanted to save the oceans, and then I wanted to be an archaeologist because I wanted to figure out human origins, and then now I'm technically like, a geologist who investigates ancient environmental conditions and how they affected the evolution of humans. So it's kind of like ancient environmental science,
really
which is kind of like, that's why I kind of talk about myself as like a paleo environmental scientist. So, so it's something that I have, and maybe that's the philosopher in me. I don't know that I'm always curious about like where we came from.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think, basic human instinct.
Totally. And that's, and so I kind of figured that like, okay, if I wasn't going to get there with the philosophy stuff, which was just awful. Not the philosophy is awful. It just didn't click for me.
Oh, yeah,
what I
same
mean?
with me, yeah.
I like the thinking about it and stuff like that, but my brain is much more concrete. Like I had to find an answer, and so science was much more... It works with the inner workings of my brain. So
I completely agree with that.
So that's kind of how I'm, so I'm just going to do an end run, like I want to find the same answers. I'm just going to do it through a scientific route. So it's always been important, I guess, as an intellectual curiosity, but... I really do have, the earth muffin in me. I can't help it. You know what I mean? Like, I've always been a naturalist. I've always enjoyed what's around me and seeing it, succeed and prosper and whatever else.
Right.
And so,
oh, absolutely.
Like, yeah, it's super important. I've been to some places in the world too. I've been, to Africa, and I've been to Asia and whatever else. And so you see different parts of the world, and you get to appreciate the diversity, not only in the the fauna and flora, but just the people and the landscapes and whatever else, and it gives you a great appreciation for wanting to preserve that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah. What is the most satisfying thing about your job? Working with students.
Nice.
100%. Yeah. In fact, the other day, I had a student come by. I wasn't here, unfortunately, but I knew she had an interview with a potential grad school advisor. And I had sent her an email that morning. I said, hey, just wanted to let you know I'm thinking about you. I know you got that interview today. You've been preparing for this. Just deep breath. You're going to do great. Good luck. Let me know how it goes. And she left a note on my whiteboard on my door that said, Dr. L, it went great.
Nice.
And I was like, that is just. And I also know that this student is somebody I've been talking to for the last maybe 6 months. She didn't really know kind of what she wanted to do after graduation. She had some ideas, but just in talking to her over the last 6 months, she finally figured out what it was, and she just went for it. And so far, everything seems to be falling into place. So that really makes it for me. When somebody sends me a note that's like, hey man, I'm doing great, or, I went out on a limb and I'm really liking it. And it's working out. So
warm fuzzies. See.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Even if you just, even when you're teaching class, I would say teaching is also the best part of my job. I mean, it has its frustrations, of course, when you're teaching like an intro class of 140 and like half of them are asleep and you're like, I get it. Geology is not for everybody. I understand that. But when you do see those students that are pretty jazzed about it have that like eureka moment, you're like, this is what.
Yeah, it makes it all worthwhile.
Totally. It does.
Absolutely. Yeah, I get that, man.
And when you get the emails of people who've like graduated 10 years ago, they're like, hey man, I got this great job and whatever, I'm loving it. And then, just wanted to say hi and, how much I liked your class. You're like, that's cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's good. Like you had impact over that many people. Yeah, after 10 years, like you're still like, yeah, that's amazing.
Because it's easy to think about it. Like, okay, I'm a geology professor. How much impact am I really making on somebody's life? It's easy to think that like, well, probably not much of any. And yet when you do get those emails, you're kind of like, okay, so, if I helped one person, that's great.
Yeah, right? Oh, absolutely.
All right, what's my last one? I just did that one, right? What's the most satisfying thing? Okay. If you had to pick, what you consider being your proudest moment or accomplishment in this field? Ooh.
Kind of a big one, but yeah.
Ooh, I'm going to have to think about that for a minute.
Right, yeah.
Oh my god.
Sorry, like, yeah, okay. Maybe that one's like too, like, big pictures.
No. It's a good one because it makes me think about, the first thing that comes to mind, I guess, is when I was I think I was only in like my 5th or 6th year here. I got a grant from the National Geographic Society to go do some work in Africa. And it was one of those things where I was in charge of a budget of like $25,000, and I was like, wow, I've never seen that much money.
Yeah, right. Oh,
which, for a scientist may be a drop in the bucket. I mean, people here have like, grants that are $1 million or whatever. But for me, it was kind of like my first big funded project, and I had to handle the budget, and I had to get 11 scientists to Tanzania, have them safely go to the field for 3 weeks, get them all safely back, fully vaccinated, whatever else, passports done, permits, everything else, make sure it was all legal.
Small details go into that.
A lot of details and all that sort of stuff. And despite even, we're driving out there and we get a flat tire, and we actually sheared an axle on one of our the back tires, so we actually kept. This is terrible. The guy sitting in the back left-hand seat of the vehicle had to hang out the window with a shovel, and every time the axle would try to shimmy out of the wheel, he had to hammer it back in. We were leaking oil. We lost our brakes. Thank goodness you're in the bush in Africa. You don't really need brakes.
Yeah, not going to call AAA though.
Took us a week to get a mechanic out there to help weld the thing back on, but we did it. You know what I mean? Like despite the hiccups and whatever else, we did it. We had a great project. I had then some serious difficulties getting the results published. I had a couple of colleagues on that project that just would not pull their own weight.
Oh, man.
And so it literally took us
you think you get
8 years to get the stuff published. And, meanwhile, I just got this grant. I need to produce from the grant because they won't fund you again if you don't, publish your results and stuff. And I'm trying to go up for tenure and promotion here. And everybody's going, why can't you finish this project? And it's hard to then point the finger at somebody else.
Well, you think once you get to that level, you'd be out of kind of the whole group project, not doing enough.
You would hope. You're absolutely
6th grade
right.
stuff right there.
I know. But I will say that definitely was something that could have been disastrous. But it wasn't. It definitely made me a smarter individual for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's not even just travel and stuff. That sounds terrible.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it ended up being a really great field season. And we ended up going back a couple of other times too. But I also now know too how to deal with the politics, shall we say, of group dynamics.
Oh, yeah. See, that's something that I would never want to deal with in a million years. But I guess you have to when you're
sometimes you do, but sometimes you also just can, put your foot down and just say, look, you know what, if you're not pulling your weight, I'm sorry. This person just happens to have the data that we needed to publish, and so it was a bit proprietary in the sense of I can't really just cut him out
because you need it.
He's got the data, right? So if he doesn't want to play nice, we kind of have to be a little bit delicate with the situation. But it was a big learning experience. But
for sure, I can't.
Could have been tough, but but we.
I mean, it still sounds tough enough.
It worked out in the end.
Powered through. And
it was hilarious though. I mean, I have pictures of the broken down vehicle and all of us smiling away. Just
what else can you
here
laugh
we are.
Or cry?
I mean, we're literally loaded down with gear. There's stuff strapped to the roof. There's 5 of us piled into the car. And we tried to tie the axle on with the only thing we had was string. And
how would you even go about?
Well, I was like, well, we're gonna, and it's spewing oil, and so the string got wet and would break, and we were like, what are we doing? What is going on?
And then eventually it couldn't be
but, you can't just pull over on the side of the road in the middle of the bush in Africa. You kind of have to keep moving because eventually the sun's going to go down, and you might need to get to someplace safe. And it was hilarious.
It sounds like quite the adventure.
Not one of my prouder moments, but at least we made it through, so it was okay. It also helped that one of my best friends was actually on that project, and she was the one driving, and she was a very well-seasoned field driver. So she actually didn't tell us that we had lost the brakes for about 2.5 hours.
Really? Oh, just didn't want to scare
everyone? Didn't want to scare anybody. And so we had to come up to this little gatehouse. We had to go kind of down a bridge and then come back up the bridge, and the gatehouse was sitting kind of at the top of the bridge on the other side. And so she goes down, no problem, and she comes up to the bridge, and the Tanzanians come out to check our permits and whatever else, and she tries to stop, and she starts to roll backwards because she has no brakes.
Yeah, right.
And I'm sitting here looking at her going, what are you doing? No. They have guns. What are you doing? And she just looked at me and started laughing, and she said, I didn't have the heart to tell you, but we lost our brakes about 2.5 hours ago. And I was like, what have you been doing? And she's like, I've just been, knocking it into a lower gear if I need to slow down. I was like, oh my God. So we had to get out quickly and do some talking quickly. Yeah, and just, hey, we're just sorry, dealing with a little car trouble, but it was awesome.
It's right in front of the guys with guns. That's it.
Always. I mean, like big semi-automatic, just
scary.
Fantastic. It was awesome. Yep. Yeah, it's a fun story to tell now. It was not as fun at the time.
Right? Oh yeah, they great. Oh,
we were terrified.
You can make a movie out of this.
Oh yeah, we were absolutely terrified, but no, yeah. Knock on wood. Came
right?
through. So, I got through all your questions. Do you have any others? And I told you a really hilarious story too. So.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I mean, I guess is not too much. I mean, I can't thank you enough for taking your time out of schedule. And,
do you have enough to write with, do you think?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I got an interview from you and then Dr. Anderson. Kind of just have to, transcribe the important parts, and nice. it definitely should be enough. So.
Okay. Well, if not, shoot me an email or something like that. We can do whatever.
Absolutely. Hopefully I won't, but if by the off chance I do, I'll try to keep it minimum work for you and stuff.
Not a problem. Not a problem. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Yeah. Good luck with your paper.
Oh, thanks. It's hopefully should be easy peasy with all this.
I hope so.
We'll see.
So. Good.